Right. So yesterday we had seen about basics of TestNG. What is a test annotation method? Okay. We saw the commands like depends on method. We saw how to skip the test cases. We saw how to run them in batch. Right. I also talked about assertions wherein you can validate your stuff. Okay. There are two types of assertions we talked about. Okay. And let's move further on, and I'll talk about the TestNG annotations now. Right. Now suppose you have a test function and right, and I'll just write over here system.out.println. Okay, when you run this file, it will simply print in the output like this. Executing test A and executing test B. Okay, now you can have another annotation known as @ before test. Okay, and I'll write subpublic void any name of the function, any function, say x, y, z, or uh, before. Okay, and in this I will write just this thing. Okay, and I'm going to write another annotation called after test. And in this I'll just write after test. Okay, now if you run this, you will see that the output is something like this. Before test gets executed, executing test A, executing test B, and after test gets printed. So before test and after test annotations, they are called before and after executing all the test cases in a single file. Okay, the order does not matter. I can write after test annotation over here as well. Before test annotation, the order does not matter. You can keep it anywhere. Okay, so before test is called in the very beginning. Right, now there are other annotations as well, like one of the annotations is @ before method. Okay, and I'll write it over here, public void before met after method. Okay, and in before method you simply write system.out.println before method, and in after method you simply write system.out.println after method. Okay, Now when you run it as a TestNG test, you will see the output like this. The before test is called in the very beginning. Okay, the before method and after method functions are called for every test. Okay, for every test method, right, before and after executing every test, these two functions are called. So maybe you want to execute every test on a different browser. Okay, so you can open the browser in a before method function, and in the test annotation you can do the testing, and in after method annotation you can close the browser. Right? It depends on you, it depends on how you want to implement, but this is the sequence. There is a predefined sequence in which these functions are called. You cannot alter that sequence. Okay, so this is inbuilt in TestNG. Right, now there is another function known as @ before test suite, and after suite. Now this is related to test suite, not a single test case. Okay, so to manage this annotation, right, what we'll do is we will actually use, right, so to manage this annotation we will add this test case TestNG annotations class. Okay, we'll add it into TestNG.xml, because through TestNG.xml we do the suite level execution. Okay, the test suite is executed in TestNG.xml. So I'll add another test case over here. Name will be simple annotations, and I'll add it over here like this. Now, although this test case will be executed in the end, because in TestNG.xml the tests are executed in the serial order from the first to the last, but since it has got the before suite and after suite methods, those methods will be executed with a priority. Okay, you'll see that if I run this test as a TestNG suite, I run everything. Okay, I look at the results, you will see that these three test cases are executed. Okay, and in console you will see that the first function which is called is the before suite function, which is actually in the test case, which is executed in the end. Alright, and after suite function is called in the end. Right. So for example, where we can use this, if you use the older version of Selenium RC, which I think some of you might have used, okay, then you need to start a server over there and stop a server. So generally what I used to do was, in the very beginning in the before suite function, I used to start my server, and in the after suite, that is when everything ends, I used to simply stop the server. Okay, so you can also execute it like this. Now there is another annotation to read the data, that's known as the data provider annotation, right? So hold on, I'll create a new class called read data. Now suppose I have a test case, I have a @test annotation. Okay, and The test annotation says it is public void. Say the test is for login. Okay. Now login has got different parameters which can be supplied into this test. So for example, you can supply a username and a password. Okay. And maybe you want this test to be executed more than once with different username and a different password. Alright. So you want to repeat this test with a different set of credentials, a different username and a different password. So you have got three sets of usernames and passwords with which you want to execute this test. Okay. So to execute this, what we do is we use something known as data provider. Okay, it is something like this. It's another annotation known as data provider, and it's like this: public object get data. Well, this function returns your two-dimensional object array. Okay, and that two-dimensional object array looks something like this. It has got rows and columns, depending on how many rows and columns you want to make. Okay, in every row you have the test data. You'll have the test data in every row. Okay, and the number of rows would be equal to number of times you want to execute your test. Alright, and number of columns would be equal to number of parameters in your test. For example, username and password in this case. So in this case, we'll just have two columns. Right. So we'll make a two-dimensional object array like this: object data equals to new object. Say now, right? And I'll write over here 3 2. What do you mean by writing 3 2? It is actually rows and columns. So number of rows are 3. That means I want to execute this test 3 times, and number of columns are 2. Right, because there are two parameters, username and password. So I'll fill up the data in this object array. I'll write data 0 0 equals to username 1, just taking a hypothetical example, and 0 1 equals to password 1. Alright, then data 1 0 1 1 2 0 2 1, and u2 p2 u3 p3. Okay, and in the end you simply write one single line, that is return data. So what this function will return you back will be a two-dimensional array. Fine. So you have got two columns, so that's why every time I am filling up two entries over there, and 3 rows. So this test will be executed 3 times. Only thing is you have to link this test with this data provider. You have to tell TestNG that this is the data provider for this test. Right? So you tell TestNG by writing like this, that the data provider equals to get data. Okay, and secondly, number of input parameters of this function should be same as number of rows in the two-dimensional array. So if there are 2 rows in the two-dimensional array over here, then you have to have 2 input parameters in this function. Okay, So now if you write over here system.out.println username plus password, and you run this class read data, you right click on it, run it as TestNG test. I've executed the single class and you are getting the output. Total test runs were 3. Okay, and you see that this gets printed. Right, so everything happens by itself. You just have to do the linkage. That's it. Behind the scene, TestNG automatically reads that this is the data provider for this test, gets the data and calls this function as many times as number of rows in this. Okay, if you look at the results of running the read data, this thing, you'll see that it's being called 3 times with 3 different sets of data: U1, P1, U2, P2, and U3. Okay, right? Now, what if you, by mistake, sometimes what happens, people forget to write the parameters here, right? For example, I just write the string username over here, nothing else. I don't give the option for writing I don't write the another parameter called password input parameter. In this case, if I run this test, you will see that it fails, right? And it clearly tells you a message that the data provider is trying to pass 2 parameters, but the method test cases dot read data slash login takes 1. So you have to make sure that the number of parameters in this function are equal to the ones, just a minute, equal to the total number of columns, that is 2 columns. Fine, right? So later on what we will do is we will actually read this data, the complete data, from you can say from an XML file or an Excel file, or basically from an external source. We will not keep the data here. Okay, so we will see how to read the data from the external source, and we will certainly move forward. Okay, right. Now just a minute, let me open up my website and check out if I am not missing anything in TestNG. Hold on. Okay, right, we are almost done. Right, this thing known as the ant and all, I will talk about when I talk about frameworks. Okay, I will not talk about right now. Okay, I'll talk about ant when I am doing the framework with you. Right now, sometimes what happens is that uh, I'll talk about assertions in a little detail now. Okay, if I create a new class called validations, what are assertions used for? They are used for validations. Okay, now if you I created the main function. If you are having a test function, okay, and suppose in this I write the code for WebDriver. Okay, WebDriver equals to new Firefox driver, which we have studied earlier as well. Okay, and I include the Selenium jar files in this project. Hold on. And I write over here driver.get http gmail.com. Okay. Now suppose I have Gmail over here. I open up Gmail and suppose I want to compare the title of the pages, right? So the title of Gmail is actually this title. So you have the expected title here. Okay. And you have the actual title here like this, driver.get title. And I want to compare them and report if they both do not match. So obviously for that I'll use assertions. As I talked yesterday, I'll use assert equals. Right. Now look, this is the mistake which most of the people do and even I have done. Look, assert class is present in the JUnit framework as well as TestNG. Accidentally I imported I used the one from the JUnit framework. Okay, so please don't do that, right? Delete this line and import it from the TestNG framework. Okay, so I have imported this assert class from TestNG now, right? So in TestNG, you have the actual value first and then expected. In JUnit it is the other way around. The expected is first and actual is later on. So make sure you always import the TestNG thing, right? Now you give the actual title over here and expected title over here. Okay. Now I'm just going to print A out here and B out here. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Hold on. Okay. If I run this code, it opens up the browser and goes to Gmail. Okay, and it compares the title, and if you look at the output, well, the test has passed and it prints both A and B. Right. Now if I deliberately give a wrong title, okay, I append X over here and I am giving a wrong title expected. Now if you are running this code, if you run this, what will happen is, obviously the test will fail, right? In the results, a failure is reported. Okay, the Gmail was expected and all, you get all the stuff, right? If you look at the console, you have got test runs 1, failures 1, but if you look at the output, you see that only A is printed, B is not printed. So the line on which the error is coming, the line on which the exception, the line on which the exception is actually failing, okay, the control is not going after that particular line, right? The control is just before that particular line. It is not after that particular line. So B is not getting printed. Now this kind of error is very small error. That is, you might want that fine. If the titles do not match, you just need to report an error and move forward. You just don't want to stop on that particular line. Right. So it's not a very serious thing that you should simply stop the execution of the test case. Okay. So my requirement now is that A should be printed and error should be reported and then B should be printed. The program should not stop. Okay. To avoid this, what I can do is I can put this whole thing in a try and a catch block. Like this. Okay. Instead of writing exception E for throwable for sorry assertions, we write throwable. Okay, throwable is the class which helps you to catch the assertion errors. Exception cannot catch. Okay, so we write throwable over here, and I will write out here system.out.println error. Okay, so in case there is an assertion error coming up, right, the control will go inside the catch block, error will be printed and it will move further on, right. So we don't have that situation now in which the program abruptly ends. Fine. So if you run this code validations, right click over here, run it as TestNG test. Right. Now if you look at the output, if you look at the console, you will see that A, error and B is getting printed. Okay, so I am able to continue forward with my test. I am able to avoid the test being abruptly ending, right? But the problem is that the test is passing. Okay, so I have resolved one issue, but one more issue has popped up, that the test is passing. The test should have been failing because the titles do not match. There is an exception, or there is a throwable. The control is going inside the cache block. There is an error. Okay, so I fixed the problem, but one more problem raised, that is the test started passing up. So now I want to report this test as a failure. For that, we will be using something known as listeners and all. So hold on, I have already implemented it. I'll give you the code. It's quite big code. Hold on. Alright, so to do this, you need to do two things. You need to keep two files with you. Okay, hold on. I'll create a new package here called utility package. Okay, and in this, I'll keep this class. And hold on, I'll tell you what I'm doing, and I'll keep this class. Okay, hold on. Now this is a class called TestListenerAdapter.java. Okay. this class is automatically called by TestNG after the test has been completed. After invocation function, this test is automatically called by TestNG. How does it? How does TestNG call it? It's something you have to tell TestNG. In TestNG.xml, you have to write the class name like this. Hold on. You will understand. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. In TestNG.xml, I am writing utility dot TestNG listener adapter. This is a listener. That means this class, right, test listener adapter would be called. Just a minute. Yeah, this class test listener adapter after invocation function would be called after the test is over. Okay, and this file errorutil.java has got two functions: add the verification failures and get the verification failures. Okay, errorutil is like a basket. Okay, you can keep on adding the errors in the basket, right, by calling the function add a verification failures. Okay, suppose we have got 5 errors in a test and you are using 5 try catch blocks like this, like the one which I am using. So in the try catch block you can keep on writing like this. In the catch block you can write error util dot add verification failure e. Okay, so you can keep on adding as many errors into error util. It's like a basket. If you have to add 5 errors, maybe somewhere over here you are doing some other validation as well. You can keep on adding errors, and when the test is over, the after invocation function is called, and what it does is from the error util it gets the verification failures, and this function actually has got some code which communicates with the reports and all everything. Okay, so you just need to keep it like this, right? Just there are 3 simple steps: add this file, add this file, and in testng.xml add the listener. After that you can simply add error util like you can add run validations.java from here. Okay, right, now to execute this test has to be executed from testng.xml. Why? Because it's the testng.xml has the reference to the listener class. That's why. So you'll have to give one more test called as validations over here, and it will be in the test cases validations class. Okay, now if you right click on testng.xml, run it as a testng suite, so you will observe that, hold on, validations, spelling mistakes, be very careful guys, it's validations, right? So if you right click on this and you run it as a testng suite, so now yeah, you see that the test listener adapter function is called again and again, and now the browser opens, it goes to Gmail, the titles would be compared here. Okay, and if you look at the results, the validations test is failing. There is an assertion error coming up, and along with that both A and B are getting printed. Okay, so this is how you can avoid your program to actually stop, right? And along with that you can do the validations as well. So you just have to use try catch block, and in the try catch block you can keep on adding the errors in the error util. And as I told you, error util file is just like a basket. Fine. So guys, this is about TestNG. This is all about TestNG.